I do have some comments I'd like to make concerning the CVLink. I want to report that we had a meeting of the Executive Committee on June 1, 2015, just a few days ago. The Executive Committee means the one member from each city or jurisdiction that belongs to CVAG can send a member of the Executive Committee. Usually it's the mayor, the supervisor, but any alternative. We had a full house and then some at the meeting on June 1st. The City of Rancho Mirage had produced 4 motions for consideration by the Executive Committee, one of which the motion that we had made was to hire an independent attorney to evaluate whether Measure A funds could be used to pay for operations and maintenance of the CVLink over the coming decades of following its having been completed, assuming that it gets completed. And the reason that we withdrew the motion was because at that meeting, the CVLink leadership said that they would release a document that they had previously claimed to be attorney-client privilege, that they would release a report from the law firm of Best and Krieger, a well-known firm throughout Southern California, with respect to their opinion as to whether Measure A funds could be used for operations and maintenance, also referred to as O&M, in the future. Being the member of the Executive Committee, I withdrew the motion because it seemed improper to assume that we would need an independent voice answering the legal questions until at least I had read what Best and Krieger had to say on the subject. And now that I have seen it, comprehensive in many respects, my feeling is that we still need an independent outsider that has no axe to grind make an assessment of the legality of using Measure A funds. Best and Krieger has been the counsel for CVAG for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And so it did not seem to be, it certainly wasn't surprising that it took the position that there is a, to use their words, there is a strong argument to be made that Measure A funds could be used to pay for the operations or the maintenance, that is, of the CVLink with respect to a limited portion of the CVLink, and that portion being the low-speed electric vehicles that will be permitted on the pathway when and if it's completed. So it was the Best and Krieger opinion that Measure A funds could be used to support that element of the roadway that was related only to these low-speed electric vehicles, meaning golf carts and other similar vehicles that cannot exceed 30 miles per hour. Measure A funds, if there's anybody who doesn't know exactly what that is, Measure A funds is a fund of money that was approved by the voters of Riverside County in 2002 to approve a 1/2 cent sales tax increase, with those funds being dispersed throughout the county. Coachella Valley gets 50% of our share, the eastern share, for Measure A funds. That's sales tax money that voters approved in 2002. The issue is some cities, so far Rancho Mirage included, and Indian Wells included, Coachella included, and I think Desert Hot Springs included, some cities think that it would be improper to use Measure A funds to pay for the idea of the CVLink when there are so many roads and highways and bridges that are in serious need of repair and modernization. So the question will boil down to, if it's legal, should we take money from that fund to pay for the ongoing maintenance of the low-speed electric vehicle section of the CVLink? That's an issue that currently is being fought hot and heavy within the various cities. With respect to routes, the Executive Committee approved a staff request that they consider, for environmental impact purposes and other purposes thereafter, whether or not they should run the CVLink from Cathedral City to Monterey Avenue, that is, from Cathedral City to Palm Desert, straight along Gerald Ford Boulevard or Avenue. What is Gerald Ford? Drive. And that motion carried for them to make that evaluation. An interesting side on that was the mayor of Cathedral City asked me why I would suggest Gerald Ford as a possible route when he lives on it. Didn't I have any concern for his residents? I pointed out to him that Rancho Mirage did not make that recommendation. Rancho Mirage actually opposed that recommendation, that the recommendation was made by the leadership of CVAG, leadership of CVLink. So everybody now has that pretty much correct in their minds. One of the other proposals was that the CVLink people go back and re-examine the environmental impact of running the link down the Butler-Abrams Trail once again. We have already prohibited it by action of this council, but there was a motion to reconsider whether or not, if they took the electric vehicles off of Butler-Abrams Trail, would that be satisfactory? Butler-Abrams Trail people could not have been more emphatic in saying that would not work for them. And I could say that anybody that wants to despoil that little section of our trailways in our city is going to have to climb over a lot of bodies before they get to it. As I mentioned, Desert Hot Springs and Coachella support us. Indian Wells was a strong supporter. Indian Wells has now come out and taken the position that they're going to put to the voters the question of whether or not Measure A funds should be used for anything having to do with the CVLink. They're going to put to the voters whether the route that is proposed to go through Indian Wells, which is one of two at the moment, they're now moving toward a third. One is Highway 111. The Indian Wells Council have said that'll never happen, just like the Rancho Mirage Council voted to prevent that. The other route through Indian Wells that is being proposed is through along Fred Waring. They said no way to that, and not in a formal vote, but in an informal discussion. And the third way that CVAG proposes for the CVLink to go through the golf course along the Whitewater Channel. The representative, Mayor Peabody from Indian Wells, felt confident in suggesting that their voters would never approve any of those routes. One of the other things that occurred at the meeting was a lot of members of the public had the opportunity to speak on it. And an interesting breakdown, there were some people from the health fields that spoke about, in glowing terms, about how the Health benefits would be improved if we had the CVLink. There's an organization that was created by the CVLink called the Friends of CVLink, which is a group of bicycle riders who meet and enjoy riding their bicycles like anybody who rides a bike does. A good number of them spoke. Most spoke staying pretty much on the issues. Some leveled rude remarks toward me and our city. But the one thing I observed that none of either of those categories of speakers, and that must have taken at least a dozen to 15 people, if not more, not one single one of those supporters of the CVLink mentioned who was going to pay for it. That was left to a handful of us who believed then and continue to believe that it is a significant and serious issue concerning the operations and maintenance of the CVLink once it is finished. In that regard, it should be noted that much of the discussion, the CVLink people had brought in somebody associated with one of the Riverside County trails and a couple of other trails, none of which had any similarity to the proposed CVLink trail. And they had them talk about the cost of maintaining these totally dissimilar entities. And the purpose for that discussion is somewhat cloudy, but in my opinion, and I stress it is an opinion, it has to do with a switch of tactics that we will see coming soon from the CVLink people. In August of 2014, the CVLink leadership with the CVAG staff helping prepared a draft master plan. That draft master plan cited first-year operations and maintenance expenses. First full year. Once the whole 48.2 miles or 50, you hear different numbers, once the mileage had been completed, they estimated in that draft master plan in August of 2014 that the cost of keeping the maintenance and the operations working would be $1,619,900, round it to $1.6 million. Rancho Mirage took that number, the 1.6, if you just divided it by the 9 city council members and the county, say 10 entities paying, if they paid equally, that would be what, $160,000 in the first year for each of us. Correct me, by the way, Mr. Finance Director, if I do any number incorrectly, because somebody will charge me with doing it intentionally incorrectly, and I don't want any charge like that to have merit, because accuracy is the one thing that we've attempted to emphasize in this, and transparency is the other. At any rate, the 1.616 number was challenged by us, suggesting maybe, not anything more than that, maybe it wasn't high enough, maybe it should be higher. But that gave them the opportunity to re-examine it, and they're in the way now, they're in the way now to coming off that number. But I mentioned the August draft master plan, having that number. That was August of 2014. In March, of 2015, 2 months ago, barely, 2 months ago, the number for projected operations and maintenance in the first year was again $1,616,900. Again, $1.6 million. So just as of 2 months ago, that's what their professionals told us was a reasonable projected figure for the operations and maintenance of the program. They are now taking the position that that which was to be the final master plan was requested to be modified by us, Rancho Mirage, so that they don't have to say they decided to change it on their own. Rancho Mirage has made no request that they do anything to the master plan. It's utter nonsense. And we made that comment, said it to them face to face at the meeting on June 1st. We've made no request that they modify anything in the master plan. We don't have enough information, we don't have enough expertise to suggest modification. So we've taken them at their number, 1.6 million, and then what we've done is projected various ways as to how much that would cost each city, or in some respects, only Rancho Mirage. One of those other respects is the official recommended proposal by CVAG and the CVLink people as of April 6th at the Transportation Committee meeting, that is the CVAG Transportation Committee. They recommended approval of this master plan that I've talked about, the one for March of this year. Had we not been upset by the numbers that were being given to us by Tom Kirk, who came to City Hall, spoke to a subcommittee of Richard Kite, I believe, and I, and it's comprised of Randy, and there was one other person from staff present. He told us the TOT proposal that they were also recommending at the Transportation Committee meeting on April 6th of this year. And that projected out, without going into the numbers, that had 5 cities paying for like 95% of the entire cost of the operations and maintenance into the indefinite decades ahead. 5 cities, Palm Springs, because 5 cities have enough TOT to make that figure, to make it pass, so to speak, if we all approved of it. Palm Springs making the most in TOT, second is Palm Desert, third is Indian Wells, fourth is Rancho Mirage, and fifth is La Quinta. Those 5 cities would have been paying about 95% of the cost. The county would be paying virtually nothing. They don't have hotels. They have one, maybe it's a hotel or motel or so, but it provides very little in the way of TOT, transient occupancy or bed tax, TOT. So we rejected that plan. So if they turn out with another final master plan, and the figure is off of $1,616,900, which I have every reason to suspect will occur, the problem that creates is this. Those of us who are responsible to a city to say yay or nay as to the city assuming the long-term expenses of operations and maintenance of the CVLink in the coming decades, we now have 2 numbers that we have to choose from. We have, it'll be slightly under $1 million probably on the new one, or the 1.6. Well, we have to assume the 1.6 is the accurate number. It was the least politicized number, and maybe we would want to have our own assessors look at the numbers to see if that 1.6 is adequate. But even though they come in with a lower number, people with the responsibility of putting their cities on the hook for paying that over the coming decades have got to examine extremely closely, and with some degree of skepticism about any reduction that CVAG may come up with for the next version of the master plan. The last point that I'd like to make, and that I made at that meeting, is this is a project. There's a legal expression. It's called ass backwards. What that means is it's like the cart is before the horse, so to speak. There are other ways of describing it, but that's the way lawyers describe it. Have you ever heard of a $100 million project? And we've got some people in this audience right now who we'll be seeing and hearing from shortly, who know how to deal with projects in those kind of numbers. Can you imagine a project of $100 million that if it goes bust, not one person will lose a dime? Nobody has skin in the game. The $100 million is being raised by grants from governmental entities, from hospitals, or from park sources. 20 million of it, they claim that they've raised. They claim they've raised about 75 million. They've really only raised 55 million. An additional 20 million of it is what they assume they're going to be able to get out of Measure A funds. That still has to be decided. So they claim they raised 75. They've actually raised 55. They're expecting to take up 20 million more of Measure A funds. So if the whole thing just simply falls apart at the end after the money is spent and the 50 miles of linkway is put together, and no city is willing to sign on to assume the responsibility of operations and maintenance, at these figures, it's $33,000 a mile in the first year. If you figure, say, 2% increases for cost of living adjustments for the long-term future, that number, the 1.6 million, escalates fairly rapidly. So if the cities decided that they couldn't pay it, who loses money? Amazing. Nobody. It's just money that not one person loses because nobody has financial responsibility for the success. And in this case, they have absolutely no plan, no current plan for how they're going to pay that 1.6 million per year, escalating at 2% over the next coming decades. They have no idea. And I dare say there was never been a hotel built that didn't figure out O&M based on room occupancy, percentage of room occupancy, and other factors. So they would know how much they're going to have to keep feeding into the project until it finally gets its wings and goes sailing. This project is the most unique thing I've ever heard of in that context. Nobody has skin in the game. Nobody loses if it goes broke. What a magical way to do business. At any rate, that's the end of my report. Just wanting to bring you up to date where we are. And hopefully, the right things will happen, and we'll determine along the way what those are. The city of Rancho Mirage certainly is not going to sign on to any route going through the city until we know what the costs are going to be, or until we have absolute certainty that we're indemnified in some manner by some organization, some private organization, some public organization. We don't care, but we're not going to put that kind of a burden on future residents of Rancho Mirage. Okay.